So how'd you get into the construction business? Have you always been in construction?
No, I haven't. Kind of fell into it a little bit by happen chance. Went to college after
What'd you study?
graduating from WLA. Went to school for a broad area engineering degree,
Oh, nice.
which most people really haven't heard of. It's a degree at River Falls.
So was it construction level engineering or product engineering or just kind of an overview?
It was an overview
Yep.
of all the engineering disciplines. So
It sounds like something I'd like to do.
What I kind of got excited about was environmental initially, and then that kind of led to mechanical, structural, and those kinds of disciplines in engineering. And I kind of gravitated towards environmental, so I had a emphasis in environmental, and then I kind of liked the structural end of things. I'm like, well, that kind of seems neat, and getting into construction. So
Yep.
I also did an emphasis in structural, stayed an extra half a semester to get my degree in that. And unfortunately, when I came out of school in the mid 90s, the construction economy wasn't the
Yeah.
best. It was okay. So my first opportunity actually was an environmental engineering job, and I kind of learned quickly that I didn't know if I wanted to do that, could handle that responsibility at 22 years old. My first job offer was being a county agent.
So what is environmental engineering?
It could mean a lot of different things
Yep.
as far as soil contamination,
Yep.
whether it's oil, or it could mean just dealing with like farms
Yep.
that have runoff issues, manure, or nitrate pollution and things like that. So I'm so far removed from that.
Well, we were just talking about a soil
We were.
project on site. That's as far as excavating and soil and that part of the ecosystem of a building project. That's one of the more challenging aspects of it.
certainly.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what's underneath the
Till you
ground
start
until you
digging.
really open it up.
Yep.
And that's where you rely on your geotechnical engineers, ones that soil engineers that deal with that and can evaluate your options if you ever do run into unsuitable soils. And
Yep.
unfortunately, in development we run into it quite often, unfortunately, and
Yep.
it's not a lot of fun to deal with, dealing with the cost, but it's almost a necessary evil to deal with it if you
Yeah,
want your
just-
building to hold up long term.
Yep. So what does Keller do specifically within general contracting? You guys specialize in certain types of buildings and certain types of projects. I know it was one of the reasons that we ended up going with you guys for our project was you had a focus and a specialty. How would you define that for people?
Yeah, I guess you're looking at it from a 30,000-foot view,
Yep.
we're what you call a design builder. So we have architects on staff, interior designers on staff, and then project managers, superintendents, and all the field trades that you need for all the general construction trades. So that's kind of the overview as far as specialty work that we do.
A lot of industrial buildings.
Industrial's
Yep.
very hot, something we've done probably more of than anything. Dental is another one that we do a lot of dental clinics. Eye care, veterinary is another one. Gas stations,
Yep.
office buildings, retail. So just about everything across the board. And right now, I mean, the markets are pretty hot across the board. Retail is a little soft,
Yep.
but we are seeing a lot of older buildings like the Shopko building we just did in town and putting a Home Depot, or not Home Depot, but
The Big Lots?
Big Lots and Hobby Lobby.
Oh,
there.
nice.
So we have actually quite a few projects going on. We're doing the exact same thing over in Sheboygan for the same developer that bought the one here in town, bought the one over there. And next on the docket's West Bend and Stevens Point. So pretty interesting when you get
For
into
sure.
those second generation buildings, we call them. They originally built for a purpose,
Now you get to repurpose them.
and now you repurpose it to something different. So
Do you run into a lot of zoning issues? I know in certain smaller cities, smaller areas, rezoning is easier. We actually loosely looked at a couple of those. There was Shopko and Home Depot, and then there's a Best Buy. There were a few retail buildings, and not really knowing anything about the construction process. It's like, what do you mean you can't buy a building and repurpose it? But how often do you run into those issues in this area?
well, it's when you have a change of use. If it's
Change of use,
retail
yeah.
and it's going to stay retail, there isn't an issue. But
Yep.
if you're going to take it from retail and go to manufacturing, depending upon where it's located, a lot of municipalities, it just doesn't fall into their overall comprehensive zoning plan. So, but we have done it before. We actually took the Home Depot in Beaver Dam and converted it into a manufacturing building, and I believe actually Mayville Engineering owns it now.
Okay.
So yeah, it can happen depending upon location. And we try to work through it as best as we can. You get your local people involved, like Envision Fond du Lac helped you guys quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Get your project off the ground.
That's who connected us originally, was Envision.
That's right.
Yep. So you mentioned design, build, construction. What are the other types of construction management? I know you could have a engineering firm that writes
delivery methods.
Delivery methods. So that's the term. How the project gets delivered. Okay.
Yes. So there's three, three that are most common and available to owners like yourselves. One is architect bid build, which is something we don't do a lot of. Most of our projects are on the design build basis, which is your second.
You like to have your
delivery
architects
option.
And designers in-house.
Right.
Yep.
So the architect bid
Yep.
build option is independent architect, independent builder.
Yep.
And then the owner hires, both of those separate entities on separate contracts. Whereas design build, it's one contract for design and construction.
Yep.
And then the third one is construction management, which we actually do a fair amount of. And that division within our company is actually getting a little bit bigger. We use it mostly for municipal work where projects have to be publicly bid. So we're acting as the architect and engineer and construction manager, meaning we don't self-perform anything.
So you guys sub all of the work out.
We sub all the
Okay.
work, so every division of work is publicly bid.
Yep.
Schools, we use construction management a lot. That's pretty common in the school arena, using that type of delivery because there's a lot of value that your contractor, your general contractor, or construction manager, if that's what it's really kind of the same thing, but can bring to the table through the design phase and value engineering and helping the architect bring a project in budget and kind of what materials to use that are cost effective at the time. Because last year was like, okay, everybody switched to steel when wood was going up, then wood went up, and then
Yep.
we switched back to steel, and it goes back and forth. So having that contractor knowing what the material costs are really help drive the design and
Yep.
try to make it as cost effective as you can in this day and age is obviously a tough challenge.
So when you guys are doing design, build, and self-performing work, what types of construction are you doing? I know we like across the street right now we see guys with their Keller uniforms on. Is it concrete work? Is it excavating, or what part of the project are you guys performing?
Yeah, over there right now we got our excavator.
Yep.
He's digging foundations for us, and then our footing crews are following behind them, and then our wall crews will follow behind the footing crew. So that's really what's happening right now.
Yep.
And we have specialized crews. So we have footing crews that all they do is footings. So they're done doing footings here, they're going to go to the next job, and the wall crews are going to finish up, and then they'll end up going to the next job. So, and then we got flat work crews that all they do is flat work.
Yep. Yeah, it's fascinating to see the process and be a part of it. We're used to designing small things. We could have controllers inside of lights, lighting products. We do larger lighting towers. Right now we're designing a 100-foot light tower for the military. But just to see a project like this come together and see that design process, it's interesting because it's that's in part our industry. We work with contractors and distributors and people that support these types of projects all the time, but we're pretty far removed. So it's interesting to see the similarities, the differences, the importance of the schedule. It's one thing that it seems like you guys do a great job of is that that planning and then execution phase where we a lot of the projects we work on from a lighting standpoint, that are more discretionary, they're not planned. There can be a lot of schedule chaos once things kick in. So it's been interesting to see that. So as far as project management role, as we were talking before we started, project manager can mean a lot of things. It means different things in different industries. When we first met, I thought you were like part of the sales team. So you're on the very leading edge of the customer relationship, but also managing the process, managing some of the design, helping the owner envision the building. Within construction or within design, build, construction, how do you define a project manager? What does that role look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, for us as a design builder, it might be a little different than a contractor that doesn't do in-house design. So for us, it's there's really 3 skill sets, and maybe you can water it down to 2. There's definitely the business development side of things. I mean, our business is very relationship driven.
Absolutely.
So our project managers are out there to live and work in their communities and be involved and hopefully build those relationships that maybe some opportunities for businesses looking to build or expand are going to come to the table at some point, but also give back to their community. So that's, and then you kind of, that maybe also could be considered sales. So I'd say that's kind of like the second skill set. I mean, there's some sales and involved and just being able to deal with people and contracts and doing what you say you're going to do and making sure you can deliver on the promises that you give. And then the third one is really the project management side of things, which is actually physically doing the construction work, scoping a project out, getting prices and estimates put together, and conveying the information to subcontractors, suppliers, obviously giving that to the owner so they can see a complete package and what that is. And then once the contract's executed, being able to bring the team together, bring all the subcontractors, suppliers, and all the internal people within your organization, like a Joe, our supervisor running this job, and all the foremen, and making sure everybody's, basically you're an orchestrator. You're keeping everybody on track and making sure you're communicating, and so that there isn't something left that
there's always stuff that comes up. But it's funny because I would compress the first 2 into one. You have the just from being a customer of Keller, you have the business development side of it. You have the project management side of it, which is organization, following a process, understand how the construction process works. But I would say also is the technical and construction knowledge. Like I think it'd be really difficult for somebody, based on what I've seen, to walk in with purely a project management degree and say, okay, go get into commercial and industrial construction. Like, I mean, there's a lot of technical knowledge. You're not necessarily understanding, the nuances of structural design and engineering, but just generally speaking, if it's going to work, trying to, be reasonable with customer budgets and things like that without having to go through the nuances of putting together an exact plan right away. And it was just, do you guys find it difficult? Is it getting more difficult over time to train, educate people on that? Or if we have the sales side, the project management side, and the construction knowledge, what's the most difficult to bring somebody up to speed on? And how long does it typically take?
Well, they both can be equally challenging, I would say. What you're, when you're asking someone to have that sales, business development skill set, and then someone to have that detail skill set of project management, you're almost looking for a needle in a haystack, because those people are, far and few between. I mean, if you look at a lot of the psychology out there in sales and just in psychology in general, usually you fall on one side or the other. Either if you're a people person, you tend not to be a detail person. So to find someone that can do both, you're really a chameleon, and that's what makes it so tough in what we do, because we need that type of person.
And to have a cross section of contracting knowledge. It's not just electrical. It's not just civil. It's not just it's not just the specific subdiscipline. You really have to know a little bit about a lot of things.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. So and that does come just with experience and time. We've had, believe it or not, bankers become project managers at Keller and have been very successful. Owner of or not an owner, but somebody that worked at a landscape company who's actually our president and CEO now. So he went from selling landscaping to being president and CEO of a $200 million company.
And you have to have the Rolodex of subcontracting relationships. That was another interesting observation where you have certain people you like to work with on a routine basis, or you have, for us, we had a couple subs that we wanted to be part of the bid process, and just, it's managing the customer relationships, but really also managing the vendor relationships too.
Yep, absolutely. And if there's already a relationship there, mechanically, electrically, or whatever it is, yeah, we certainly want to take advantage of that opportunity and try to be flexible and work with our owners. We certainly have relationships with subcontractors, but we always like to broaden our horizons too. So a lot of times that's how we get into relationships with new subs is through the owners that say, hey, this guy does a really good job, and you do a project with him. And I can think of a handful over my 26-year career that have really worked out well.
And probably some that haven't, right?
Some that haven't, they start off well, and then things change
south
over time, and we try to give people a second chance to redeem themselves. But yeah, we do struggle sometimes.
It happens.
It's always not a great, sometimes certain businesses aren't always a good fit. So you just got to figure out where they lie.
So let's define some terms. I remember when I first got into the lighting business, and I heard people refer to the owner, and I had no idea what that meant. But the owner is essentially the end user of the project that's funding the project, sponsoring the project. That's when people say owner, it's the
Who's
person
paying the bill?
The person writing the check.
Yep.
So regardless of the three paths the construction process takes, for most legitimate applications, there's going to be an architect involved. What's the architect's role in the project?
Well, in general, the architect is the one that has the creativity, does the space planning,
tries to understand what the owner
what the needs
wants.
are.
Yep.
Which you went through that needs assessment with Tony, and I think it was I don't know if we spent 3, 4, or 5 hours, and may have been a series of a couple meetings, and really trying to ask good questions to understand. We go into a lot of businesses. We can't claim to know everything so we got to take a lot of what's inside your brain and transfer that to Tony.
That can be difficult.
I didn't say that.
I did. Did I say that out loud? No.
So that really helps them come up with a good design. So we call that, today we're using the term discovery. I don't know, it's kind of a catchphrase today, but essentially it's a space.
Initial meeting and process to extract the intel out of the owner's mind.
We used to refer to it as a space needs assessment for many, many years, and now the word discovery has kind of come out. So new word, for the new age.
So the architect tries to understand what the goals of the owner's project are. Architects are obviously pretty technical. They understand codes. They understand kind of the local nuances of certain geographies. When does engineering kick in? Is it after the initial master plan set is put together? But what does that look like after the discovery phase? When do you guys get your engineering team or your outside engineers involved?
Right. Good question. So once the architect has a plan, all the spaces, building footprint, site plan pretty well set, it's not changing anymore, owner's happy with it, then you get the civil engineer involved and the structural engineer involved to do the site design, which is what your civil engineer does. Erosion control plans, grading, drainage, stormwater management. A lot of times a full service civil will take care of your landscaping and your photometric, your exterior lighting plans that you guys are very familiar with. So that's kind of their role, and then help us get through that would be, we don't do civil in-house, so that's something that we work with local firms on doing. Excel Engineering did yours, very nice job. They take care of that end of it and do a nice submittal package to the local municipality and the DNR for getting all the permits. So we support them through that process, but that takes care of the civil end of things, the site-related items, and then you get into the structural engineering, which is
the skeleton.
How big is the foundation going to be? How big is the footing going to be? How much rebar, size of rebar, placement of rebar, slab reinforcement, and then you get into the structural components of the actual building itself for dealing with wind and snow and all those kinds of things to make sure the building doesn't fall down and meets the
We do have to deal
local
with snow in this area, right?
Sure do. Hopefully not anymore this year.
That's true. So we got civil, we got structural, we have mechanical, electrical. Are you guys typically relying on engineers to lay that out, or is it the electricians or contractors that are in charge of that? But who does the electrical, who does the mechanical side of it?
Yeah, good question. So being design build, we rely on our trades. So
Yep.
our electrical contractor to do the electrical design, and HVAC contractor to do HVAC / mechanical design. Same thing with plumbing and fire protection.
Yep.
So they're all responsible for doing their own design to make sure they meet the design intent. So we'll give them a plan, and then we write up a guideline, a scope guideline, saying here are the expectations of the owner. So like HVAC related, here's the temperature requirements and here's the types of systems we were thinking that would be suitable, and give them parameters on the level of efficiencies we're looking for, whether it's a 90% unit to 92% and all those kinds of things. So then they can put a price together or quote together based on those parameters.
Yep.
And then ultimately they're responsible for the system functioning properly. So if the HVAC system doesn't work, you have one guy to go to because he designed it and installed it. So that's one of the advantages of the design build, especially on the MEP
Yep.
side. There's a level of accountability.
They call that one throat to choke, right?
One throat to choke. Yep.
I've had many contractors tell me you are my throat to choke on this job when it comes to lighting. So we on the supply chain, we're on the receiving end of that as well. But one of the really interesting things that I learned about this is you also have contractors and suppliers for the internal systems. So if you guys are in charge of putting a powder coat line in, or if there's some type of process engineering or other type of, I don't know if you guys do any cheese plant building or anything like that, but it's not only the structure of the building, the mechanics of the building, but there's other things that could be in the interior. How often when you guys build industrial facilities do you get in that far to powder coat lines? I know you set us up with a nice tour of BCI Burke in
Right.
town, and we got to check out their powder coat line. How often do the owners and their engineering teams handle that versus how much do you actually pull in subs and suppliers to help with that?
Well, like the powder coating line or paint line example, one of our good customers, TTX up in Sturgeon Bay, is I
Yep.
believe the one that did BCI Burke's new
I
line.
see. So TTX is they're a client.
They're a customer of
Yeah.
ours, but we rely on whether it's them or it's a different say paint line or
Yep.
powder coating manufacturer that's brought to the table. There has to be a lot of dialogue. We just finished a large project for MB Companies up in Chilton. They did a very sophisticated paint line powder coating system. So there has to be a lot of dialogue. So if the owner has a preferred vendor for that, we work directly with them. They give us all their requirements for, say, a lot of times there's special foundations that need to go underneath for ventilation ducts that might be under a downdraft booth, or you might get into special drains for washing down prior to painting parts and drying, and a lot of ventilation for the ovens and things like that. So yeah, they're very important to the process. And if an owner doesn't have one, like in your case,
Yep.
you had a couple maybe that you were dealing with, and we said, well, here's maybe a few others that you want to consider that have done work in the area.
Yeah, and that's been a great part of the process. Just expanding our own network. Through whether it's other clients of yours that are in different industries that we're not competing against, but it's similar types of manufacturing, and just to understand what they do well, what we do well. That's definitely been a benefit of the process as well. So we didn't look at too many different construction options for metal building versus non-metal building, but you and I had a conversation a few months back where you said, is it prefab, or there's other types of materials that are now becoming more competitive with steel, or what are you guys seeing in the market right now for different ways to construct the actual building? I guess what are they, and where are costs compared to a couple years ago?
Sure. Well, as everybody knows, prices of steel have went up significantly over the last 18 to 24 months. So whereas concrete hasn't really changed all that much. So your precast concrete buildings or tilt-up concrete buildings have now that difference isn't that great anymore.
Yep.
So we're finding ourselves today giving owners options to do those kinds of buildings versus just do pre-engineered steel. We've done a number of precast buildings in our throughout Keller's years.
Yep.
But now they're starting to become more and more popular.
So a precast is just a concrete section or concrete wall that takes care of the structure, the insulation, pretty much everything.
Correct.
Bunch of concrete with rebar going through it.
Essentially, it's a layer of concrete on the outside, a layer of concrete on the inside with insulation sandwiched between it. So from an energy efficiency standpoint, the precast is a really nice solution because it's a continuous insulation envelope. Where with pre-engineered, you don't always get every single square inch of that exterior isn't insulated to its fullest extent. So precast buildings are very efficient, and fortunately lead times aren't that friendly with precast a lot of times. So but right now lead times are for precast and pre-engineered steel are about the same.
Do they cast it in a standardized dimensions, or is it done per the spec?
There's different, usually like a 6 foot or 8 foot panel.
Yep.
Sometimes you can get them 10, 12. Depends. A lot of times windows and door spacings, docks, drive what the panel sizes should be. So up in Valders, Spancrete is one of the companies that make a lot of the precast in this area.
Okay.
And then there's a couple companies in the southern market and one up in Minneapolis. Those are kind of the four that provide that to this industry. And the other construction material is instead of it being a pre-engineered metal building, which we do a lot of, we also do a lot of what's called conventional steel construction, which is essentially an engineer has to design every column, every beam, and then you rely on bar joist suppliers that provide bar joists, which are the members that carry the roof.
So within pre-engineered, it is made to the site specifically, but there are standards for I-beams and tube lengths, and they're not making every single component of the building custom for the site, or are they? If it's pre-engineered, it's still, I would say it's still custom. It's still custom because you can order whatever you want. Now, some things, if you put in the wrong parameters, it'll cost you a lot more. So you kind of got to know, okay, what's an economical size? You don't want to be an inch too long or too short and be outside of a standardized length.
So base spacings really drive the cost. You know, is it 25 foot on center, 27 and a half, 30? And so there's some sweet spots that help with the efficiencies.
Well, one of the topics I wanted to close on and touch on is just trades, and some of the challenges in the trades. I've read things where I talked to Jason Zellner about this too. But for every 5 people retiring in the trades, there's only 2 people that are replacing them. So what is Keller doing to offset some of that? What do you see some of your competitors doing? What do you see the area in general doing? Certainly Wisconsin, when it comes to engineering, manufacturing, construction, the trades, on a relative basis, I think we do a great job. I think there's other states and other areas that have even greater challenges. But when you look at kind of the collective of this area, what do you see happening at Keller, and what do you see other people doing to help combat some of that?
Yeah.
And are we making any progress?
That's a tough one. I think there's some progress being made. I think the biggest shift in the last 3 to 4 years is how much college costs. That was always the thing. You went to school, it was drilled into your head. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. So I think that trend has changed. That wages have really went up.
Yeah.
Not only, really in the field. You can make some very, very good money.
Yep.
Being a electrician, plumber, steel erector, concrete. It's tough work. There's long hours, and sometimes the jobs aren't always 20 minutes from home, and you may have to drive an hour or two. And
you may have some aches and pains when you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, but
right. Well, you hope at that point, that's the beauty of it is you progress and then you become an office employee. And that I could name one project manager that worked in the field for 20 years and came in, and he's one of my best project managers because he has that field experience. He sees things that I don't see. I spent 6 months in the field, so I didn't spend enough time there. I probably should have spent more there. Maybe my learning curve would have been shortened.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I would say the biggest thing is really getting into high schools right now. That seems to be the hot thing, and apprenticeships. WLA has it. Fondy High has it. I don't know about St. Mary Springs, but most of your schools, Campbell Sport and around the area, have all those, construction trades classes to try to at least expose kids to the trades, hopefully get them interested. Hiring them on as summer help, it's a little bit tough. We really can't put people under 18 in the field, so at least in our business, just for liability reasons, but we can put them in the office and they can at least see it and expose it.
Yep.
And shadow some project managers, try to get a flavor for what goes on a job site on a daily basis. So that's probably been the best, and we've created some pretty good relationships with different school districts to get in to talk to them and give a little background on Keller and
Yep.
the trades. And one thing that's been good for Keller is we're an ESOP, so we're employee owned. That really helps with the recruitment and retention. I can't imagine not having that, how hard it would be.
Yeah.
Because it's hard even with that.
People have a vested interest in sticking around.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's instead of the one guy in the corner or the one owner getting the check at the end of the day, it's split amongst the employees. So that's a really nice added benefit for retirement. I mean, it's a pension that
Yep.
that is really special, and it motivates people as well because
Yes.
they want to do a good job. They really need to act like owners,
Yep.
act like an owner, and it is really their money. If you make a mistake, you're costing the company money and yourself.
Yeah, and to know that there's promotional opportunities where, if you do, if you get promoted and do well over time, you might not get stuck in the field when you're 50 and 60 years old. And I think, you look at a lot of people that are in the trades, they're probably making rational decisions to not necessarily want to get in there long term. But if you get, to have options where you can tell high school kids or people that didn't go to college, you're going to become a master in the field. And then over time, when it comes to learning the project management role or learning other roles, it's, build the network, learn the project management process. And when it comes to the technical side of it, they've seen 1,000 subcontractors. They've seen, 1,000 different job sites. That hiring pipeline, promoting from within seems to be a great way to do it.
Yep, absolutely. That's exactly what we've done. I mean, we've had field people think, hey, maybe I should get an office job and come in the office, and then maybe the office isn't what it was meant to be. And then they go back out to the field again. So we've seen that happen too.
I think they say the grass is always greener, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's great. No, you guys have done a great job on our project. We're excited. Still blows me away how fast that it's projected to get done. But, it seems like, the planning stages and all the front end work that goes into it so that when it's go time, you can stay moving. We try and do the same thing on a much smaller scale at our, when we're manufacturing product, is get the planning, get the supply out of the way. So when we have a large project, is, once the guys start building it, you really don't want them to have to stop. So,
Right. That's the biggest thing is, especially with the supply chain interruption right now, is really educating our customers that it does no good to rush and start
yeah.
and then wait for materials to show up. So the schedule is really built off of when are the materials available to be delivered. So we really try to do our due diligence, find out what those dates are, and then we build a schedule around that so it's very systematic, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
It's just, everything flows just the way you want it to be efficient.
It's manufacturing on site, right?
Exactly.
It really is. Well, Bob, thank you very much for stopping by, and thanks for all you're doing on our project.
All right.
All right,
You're welcome.
thanks,
My
man.
pleasure.